So, I just always want to be real with you guys. And I'm aware that, not many people will watch this. And maybe people will. And at the end of the day, I don't really care. But I know that I don't want to write about it. At least not at first. Um, I think talking about God is really hard because it's kind of like a love hate or apathetic situation. You either love it or hate it or just don't give a shit. Um, just with the whole situation. And most people I know outside of the church have been hurt by the church. And then I have friends who work for a church, and I just feel so in between until lately, and especially today. Um, Gungor, which is a band, a Christian band, just came out with their newest CD today, and it's super exciting because I remember loving some of their stuff, and I haven't listened to it in ages. So I went and I listened to it, not the new album, but the song that I really, really loved, um, and which led me to a different song, not by Gungor, but by John McMillan, who sings "How He Loves Us," and he actually wrote that. But the David Crowder Band is normally the one who sings it, and which led me here talking to you guys because back to why I wanted to talk about it. um, I think it's really easy to read what people have written about religion or spirituality or just God and either hate on them or love on them or do whatever. But I think and feel, and me included, you kind of forget that those people are human and that they've been through things. Even like the hardcore Christians who are super like anti-gay people, like it's really easy for me to hate on them and be like, you guys must be terrible people inside of your hearts. What's wrong with you? And I just forget that they're people. Um, they really are. Like, they're people. Um, and I'm the opposite of them. And for that, I'm thankful. But at the end of the day, we're both still people. Um, and that's why I wanted to, film this. So I can watch it back, but also so people can see that there's a person behind this. This isn't just me spouting out what my parents have taught me or what leaving the church has taught me or any of that. I'm a real person with real ideas and thoughts and feelings. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and going back and forth throughout my life um, of being, when I was younger, I was super hardcore black and white, believed in the rapture, believed that the Bible was true, everything. I was never okay with hating gay people. I was always super loving of them because that's how I was raised. And I never could fully wrap my head around the whole there's only one way to heaven thing. That always seemed like complete BS to me because other parts of the world have religion that's way older than Christianity, and I was always like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And I always just kind of thought it was really pompous, quite honestly. Um, but then I went kind of the other way and just decided that if God is love, then that's all I'm going to know. And that's what I'm going to base my view of God on. And I actually liked that, but it left me really wondering about sex because that was like as a teenager growing up in any type of church, that's what you talk about the most. And I got really just like, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. This isn't fitting with what I think or what I feel. None of that, you know? And especially that was during high school, which meant I was already crushing on girls while having grown up crushing on guys. And I was just like, well, this is just weird. It's weird. Everybody, or at least a lot of people, think it's really weird when you have a crush on somebody of, your own sex. And I never thought it was weird. I was just like, yeah. But I think that's kind of who I am. Still to this day, I don't want to say black and white, but I'm very extreme, as some people call it. I'm either extremely for something or extremely against something. although at the same time, sometimes I extremely don't care. um, but so at that time, I just extremely didn't care. And I was mostly okay with myself, but I was also really at odds with my Christian friends because I didn't know what to think. Um, and it was a hard time. Um, and then fast forward through all the shit that happened, which was I chose to go to a different church than the one I was in since the very beginning of that church, but I wanted to stay in their small group because I loved them. And they kicked me out of their small group because I wasn't volunteering at their church anymore. And my youth leader, who I was also I was a youth leader, and the youth pastor completely bitched me out. Completely. Like, it was terrible. And so to just be treated so badly by these people that I had known since I was like 14, just kind of sent me into this downward spiral of no longer trusting Christians, and developing a very strong dislike, and just anger towards, which ended up being an anger towards God. And I stopped going to any church, and I was just done with it. I felt rejected, and I also, as a kid, when kids reject you, and you're like, anyway, that's how I felt, and that's how I wanted to feel, because then I wouldn't feel so incredibly hurt. Because I had just loved God since second grade, and at this point I was 22, I guess, or probably 21. I'm 23 now, and I haven't actually seen any of my friends from that church except for maybe once or twice, except for like one of my very great friends from that church. But it's weird how I got kicked out of a small group, by two of my best friends, that I had known since I was very, like a young teenager, and one of whom I was just so bonded with, and I couldn't believe that it was happening, and that I had seen it coming. Because I was like, what's the worst thing that can happen? They'll kick me out. And then I was like, holy shit, they're going to kick me out. And then that's what they did the next day. So I came to believe that just church was a business, and always feeling excluded. Even when I wasn't there, I was just like, I don't want to go to a church because I'll make friends and I'll start to feel loved again. And then they'll go up there and they'll preach against gay people. Or they'll do something. They'll be Republican, quite honestly. And I was just like, I'm not okay with that. So I never went back. And recently I've been really wanting to go back to church. I miss it. And I don't miss the cliquey part of church. I miss God, quite honestly. And I know that God is outside of the church, clearly. But I don't know, you grow up going to church, even though I didn't, but I mean, for a very long time I went to church, and I felt God's presence there. Not always, and more often than not, I felt God's presence outside of church. But it just really refueled my spirit being around people who, even if we're all sinners. I don't like to use Christianese, even though that's not Christianese. Also, side note, Christianese is like saved, or, covered by the blood, things that Christians say, i.e. Christianese. I know that we're not all perfect, and I really disagree with a lot of people in my old church, obviously. But it was great getting to sing with them, and you all felt connected by the same love. Even if they knew that I liked girls, they wouldn't love me. And then when I chose to go to multiple churches and interact with multiple churches, I no longer was deemed worthy of that love. But that's just one church, and people are all not perfect, so there you go, I guess.